That joke isn't funny anymore. Available on Amazon and everywhere. Hey guys, welcome back to the Lou Perez Podcast. I'm your host, Lou Perez, and I'm very happy to say that this is the first broadcast that I am doing with the Lions of Liberty Network. So if you've never heard my voice before, you're going to hear a lot of it and a lot of my ums and likes and all that. So I hope you enjoy the show. And right now, this is an exclusive on Lions of Liberty, as well as on my Substack, the Lou Perez. And then eventually it'll get out there to the rest of the streams. Just a couple of updates for those of you who've been following me. I got a new haircut. I cut my hair short. I have a new bookcase behind me for those who like the visual. And I'm just off. I'm on a little break from a tour with Scott Thompson, which I'm going back on in May 17th to be exact. We're hitting up Louisville, Kentucky. So I'll have all that information in the description. And now, without further ado, for one, I want to thank him for his patience as I go through my agenda, my to-do, everything that I've been doing. My guest today is Adam Coleman. He is a commentator, an author. He has a book out, his new book called The Children We Left Behind. And he's also a model for XXXY. How would you describe that, Adam? I see your face all over the website and stuff.
Brand ambassador / model, one-time model.
There we go. I'm also a brand ambassador for XXXY, so we have that in common. Still working on my modeling though. I got to get my poses down. So hopefully I can help sell more gear. So Adam, thank you so much for doing this. I know when you have a new book, you're basically doing this every single day, talking about the same stuff. So hopefully hopefully you're not too tired from doing that, and I'm not going to bore you from doing that. If you're like me, you'd love talking about yourself. So so we can go there. I just got off the road, first part of a tour with I'm opening for the comedian Scott Thompson from The Kids in the Hall, and so I'm a little out of it. I'm on the East Coast now. But for a little while, we did shows out west, and then I came back east for Easter, and then I went back west. So, and then I was in DC the other night. So I'm all over the place. So my apologies if I'm not where I need to be. But
no, you're all good.
Thank you. So you have the book out, The Children We Left Behind. How did that come about? The book itself.
Yeah. It's a topic that is personal to me because of my upbringing. It's also a topic that I would see in different news stories. There's a family element to a lot of the things that we're often talking about, and I've written for different publications highlighting while we're talking about, let's say, some sort of criminal act, a mass shooting or something of that nature. There's an element of family dysfunction that lies underneath it, and it's a common thing that keeps popping up. And it's not to say that it's the only reason why this happened, why this one particular event, or that every child who grows up in a dysfunctional home will do something of this nature. But it's in the same way that with within every demographic, there are going to be the extremes. So on the extremes of family separation, and we already know in general how family separation affects children. On the extremes of it, you have this type of extreme action, in how kids express themselves in frustration or express themselves because of abuse that's unresolved. All these different things, it shows up in different ways. Some kids self-medicate, they become drug addicts, but they don't hurt anybody else. Other kids are angry at the world, and so they want to take their anger out on other people. Some kids just want to punch holes in the walls, right? Some kids want to have sex and have sex indiscriminately because that's the only way they feel good, right? There's various ways that these kids who grow up to become adults react to the world and express themselves to the world. So I just wanted to write about how family separation has impacted our society, but also use my story as an example. While I'm not in the extremes of hurting other people or taking drugs or going to jail, I do fit into the demographic of kids when it comes to suicidal ideation and being medicated. Well, not necessarily medicated, but being institutionalized because of it. So that's part of my story and my struggles throughout my years because of family separation and what it leads into. So it's not just the extremes that is negative, but it's actually cases like mine that are far more common but are detrimental in different ways.
Yeah. So in your case, was it your father who had left, your biological father? Yeah. I have so me, I'm the father of two little boys, and my two older brothers, they're, I guess, technically half brothers. Their dad abandoned them and my mom when my one brother was, I think, 8 years old and the other one was 4. So they still carry like his last name and stuff. But so with them and just seeing how they grew up, and also, well, my dad came into the picture and we ended up making like 3 little brothers for them and stuff. It was still, incredible weight that I think they still carry to this day. Their biological father passed away probably like a few years ago. But I mean, without a doubt, I think there's a lot of, unresolved issues there. And for me, I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, and I'm just thinking about, I can't fathom being the type of man that, in 3 years would say, bye, Andreas, I'm out of here, and you're never going to hear from me again. So I wonder, like, obviously there's the harm that's done to children, but I also wonder kind of like, in a way, like the psychology of the person who abandons, who leaves the family. Have you thought about that,
Yeah. So I think the part of the reason why it's far more common for fathers to leave versus mothers to leave their kids, although it does happen when it comes to mothers. That's usually when kids go into foster care because their mothers are drug addicts or they've just completely abandoned them. Or that's when you see, I like to also talk about, there's like soft abandonment, which is, I'll just name a scenario because this is very common. A 16-year-old girl has a baby. She's still a child herself. The grandmother kind of becomes the de facto mom. And so, the mother is kind of there, and maybe in this particular situation, but she's also still trying to become a woman. So she's elsewhere. Maybe she's partying too much. Maybe she goes off to school. Maybe, but often in that scenario, the child is being tossed over to the grandmother to raise. So she's not building that bond and that relationship with the mom, because one, she's very young from the beginning. She doesn't know how to. She doesn't know how to be a mother at such a young age. So like that's one type of scenario when it comes to the mom. But when it comes to the fathers, the thing that people have to understand is for a woman, growing a child inside their stomach for months on end builds a bond with that child. They're sharing everything. So when the child comes out, like there's already a bond that's built.
Right.
For the father, he has to introduce himself to that child. He's starting fresh once that child is born, as far as building an actual bond and even like a physical bond with that child, holding and touching, embracing that child. Like these are things that are very key. So the involvement, especially at the very beginning, is a very, very powerful thing when it comes to being in a child's life. And missing that, depending on, let's say, distance, or let's say they split up when she was pregnant or whatever it might be. But that distance makes it a lot easier for that man to basically say, I'm going to go my way. He can make up whatever rationalizations in his head as to why. But those excuses become far more obtainable to stay with, versus if he did build that bond with that child, he's more likely going to fight. So even if it's a situation where the mother's trying to push him away, they're bickering and he's trying to be involved in court cases and all that stuff, he is more willing to fight to be with a child that he's already bonded with versus a child that he has not bonded with. So while I'm of the belief you make a child, you're supposed to be there regardless. But I also understand that there is a connection. There's an emotional connection that needs to form. There's a physical connection that needs to form. There are chemical changes that happen to men when they start being physically involved with their child, especially at a very young age, and they're raising them, taking care of them. I believe there's a change in, it's a lowering of testosterone and increasing of estrogen for men when they start raising babies.
I remember hearing about that, and something that surprised me is I was one of those people. I thought, once my baby was born, that I was gonna, just have this instant connection. And it's sort of it's like we didn't connect on the first date. It took a few dates for us to hang out, for me to get to know one another. And it was fun. It was funny because going into it thinking like, I'm automatically going to be connected, and then sort of feeling there was a part of me that felt bad, like maybe there's something wrong with me. I don't know if it was kind of like I know women go through like a postpartum where sometimes that's the case. But yeah, I mean, when you put it that way, I can kind of see the more distance that between two beings, even if you made it, if you made the being, I could see it being a lot easier to skip out. And also I think guys have it easier too, where they can kind of leave and start over elsewhere. And something that I find that was really interesting is like my older brothers, their biological dad left with basically left my mom with for another woman. They never ended up having kids. And part of me was like, man, she was never like, hey, you got two kids that you still need to check in on. So I think another part of it is like there are people who are kind of fine with being with men who have kids with other women who aren't in their lives, who who knows, maybe this guy was an amazing person in every single other way except for this really big way. I don't know, I never got to meet him, but it's sort of like there are a lot of people who will allow you to kind of be a piece of shit. So
well, that's one of the, in a nicer way, one of the chapters is essentially titled that, but it's socially comfortable terrible parents.
Oh,
yeah.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. And in there, I highlight how much of what you just explained. It's not like he had two kids and it was just this mystery and nobody knew about it. It's like everybody knew,
right?
And everyone just accepted that he's not there, including his future partners. They just accept it. And so they made him comfortable. Maybe he was around family members. Maybe his own mother knows that she has grandkids that are out there. But he's not involved. And guess what? Probably still had a relationship with his mom. Probably didn't try to force him into like stepping up and being a man. Everybody was just socially comfortable with it or pretended that it didn't exist. They know about it, but they just want to, out of sight, out of mind. oh yeah, I know you have two kids somewhere out there, but let's talk about what's happening in front of us. It's that kind of thing. And so the kids becomes secondary or not even secondary. They become a distant thought in the entire equation. It becomes about maintaining the relationship that you have with that person who's a terrible parent. Or let's say an example where they're not abandoning their kids, but they're mistreating their kids. They talk to their kids like they're pieces of shit.
Yeah.
Right. I've heard this. I'm sure you've heard this, where there's a parent that's like just screaming at the kid and the kid's not doing anything. Just like they just initiate with anger. They belittle their kids. They talk to them like they're adults. And in some cases, I would say, and this more often than not happens when it comes to like single mother situations that I've seen personally. Obviously, not every single one, but if they have a bad relationship, like if there's just that bitterness that exists between the mother of the child and the father of the child, I've seen, especially when it's a boy, that bitterness transfers onto that boy because that boy reminds her of the man that disappointed her, or he looks just like the father. And so that anger and frustration, that immediate resentment, like if the child doesn't move fast enough, it's just boom, straight to anger. And they say stuff. I actually detail a story within the book. It's one time this woman has, I think he was, if I was to guess, like a 3-year-old. I was just walking down the street and they were leaving out of their it's like a townhouse kind of apartment. They're leaving out, walking down the stairs, and she's holding this 3-year-old by the hand. And he can walk, but he's not like, he's not walking like 8-year-olds. Right. So he's still, kind of slow, but kind of getting his footing. He has to be careful. And she's kind of just yanking him. And she's pissed off because obviously they're late. She's saying stuff like, hurry up. And she said, like, you always do this. Now, this is a grown woman who is talking to like a 3-year-old child. And do I think that 3-year-old child understands what the hell she's talking about to like a greater extent? Of course not. Do I think that this child is intentionally always making her late? No. Right. So this is badly placed frustration onto that child. And it sounded like she was talking to an adult man. So like I've just seen too many circumstances where it's like that, where the frustration of the adult, it transferred onto the child. And that's one thing. That's already bad enough. But it's even worse when there are other adults who are around who know the person. It's one thing for me as a stranger just walking down the street to interfere. But who knows this person, they hang out with them, they talk to them all the time, and no one ever checks them on it. Because everyone's taking this position like, well, who am I? Oh, she's frustrated, And it's just like, at some point, when are we going to actually advocate for children? Because it sounds like we're advocating for the adults.
Well, I got to confess, I have a 3.5-year-old, and getting him into his car seat is, he does this all the time. Where it's like, I'm like, all right, time to get in the car seat, time to get in the car seat. And he'll kind of like jump right over the car seat, kind of do like some gymnastics, and then eventually finds his way in, the buckling and all that. So as a parent, I can understand frustration, here and there, but it's definitely something that I'm conscious of. Like every single day, if I even have like a flare up where I need to, discipline my guys or make them go to their room or something, I end up spending, a good amount of time by the end of the night saying, oh man, I fucked up and I wish I could be better. I pray to God. I'm like, please help me be better. And hoping that I'm not doing any, that I didn't do any lasting damage by, getting pissed off. That yesterday was, okay, guys, we're going to play with the kite. Okay. But we've never done this before. So let's keep it in the box over here. And then after daddy puts the laundry in, he's going to come up and get it. And I go and I get the laundry and they got this kite all over the place and it's probably broken and stuff. And I'm like, guys, now we can't play with it because, you didn't follow the rules. And then I go to bed and I'm thinking like, oh, I could have handled that better. I could have handled so much stuff better. But, I wonder if there are people who are, kind of the, those kinds of parents, like if they just go about their day and without any, sort of reflection, without any like remorse, without any like, because something I have, my 3.5-year-old is so precocious. His language skills are incredible. Like yesterday we were playing and we were playing in the backyard doing, pretend. And he had this whole kind of mythology that he was expressing with like this magic diamond and stuff where it gives you powers. And it was pretty incredible. And there's been times when, I've gotten upset and he looks at me, he's like, Daddy, don't be grumpy. Don't be angry. And it's really hard to be angry and grumpy when your 3.5-year-old, this little kid just told you not to. So he's very, he's very attuned to emotion and his own emotion, which can be kind of scary because I think a lot of times there are definitely times when he's manipulating me for sure.
Well, I would say that the difference between yourself and other types of people who make certain mistakes. And as a parent, we all make mistakes. So throughout the book, I'm not saying like I figured it out.
Right.
I'm the perfect parent. I never made mistakes. But the difference between a good parent and a bad parent is that a good parent cares. They care that they're making mistakes. They care that they like you said, I could have done better, right? And that's ultimately like the point is we're not perfect. We're going to make mistakes. Could we have done better, right? Even when it comes down to stuff where your parents raised you this way, and while that might be your blueprint as to how you might be a parent, but obviously, like your parents weren't perfect either. So why don't we take the things that worked, that made sense, that you liked, and then the areas where they're like, they could have been better at this. So I'm going to do better in these areas. But often what I see is, well, my parents raised me this way. And so hence they raised me this way. It was the right way. So I'm going to do exactly the same thing that they did because it was the right thing. But like clearly, just like every parent, there's areas where they could have done better or they didn't do good at all. But to be uncritical is a whole other story. But the big thing for you is that you care. And I think that's what's really important. And the fact that you do care means that you're willing to change. Means that you're willing to say, you know what, next time I'm going to be very mindful. If they do this, I'm just going to say this instead. Or I'm going to do this instead. And just, these are very conscious choices that you're making. A parent that thinks that they're not doing anything wrong or don't care to change or whatever, they don't have the same thought process that you're having. Or at the very, and if I was to give like the biggest of grace, they might regret what they did, but they're not willing to change it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's ultimately what you want. You want to say, I acknowledge where I messed up, but I'm willing to change. So next time I don't do that again. And I detail that within the book as far as disciplining. Just because I was spanked as a kid doesn't mean I have to spank my kid. Mm-hmm. And when he was small, I would pop him and I didn't like it. And I asked myself, well, why am I doing it if I don't like it? And it's because that's what was done to me when I was a kid by my mom. And I was just repeating the behavior of my mother. And it's not that my mother hated me or she was like abusive, but I didn't like getting hit. No one likes getting hit. Right? Is hitting a child the only way? And the answer is no. But if you say that to certain people, they will fight you to the death and act like not hitting your child is the same thing as not disciplining your child. And I'm saying as a parent, if I could point out all the different ways where hitting does not fix the problem, matter of fact, it may create more problems, then is there a better way? And so not hitting your child doesn't mean you're not disciplining your child. And the root of discipline means discipleship. What are you teaching your child? What does hitting teach your child? Does it teach your child that if you do A and B, that next time, like this is the negative outcome that it can happen. This is why you don't want to do these things. Or does it teach them, if you do A, I'm going to hit you. And so you want to fear me hitting you. But what did you actually teach them? Did you teach them any sort of lesson, or to be hyper vigilant about everything because dad might come over and beat the shit out of them?
Yeah.
Like, so what are you actually teaching your child? And actually, Chrissy Mayer, I was on her podcast and we were having the same discussion. She brought up how, when she was, I think she said when she was like in her 20s, her dad raised his voice. And she's like, for a split second, she thought like, oh shit, he might hit me, because that's what happened when she was a kid. So it was like this fear that popped up because he raised his voice that triggered this old feeling from when she was a kid of getting hit. Is that what we want? Do we want our children to fear us or respect us? And those are two separate things. So from that moment on, I thought about like, well, when I was a kid, I didn't like getting hit. And I thought it was unnecessary because if you're already yelling at me, I already feel bad because I know I messed up.
Yeah.
So hitting me is just completely unnecessary. And it's just an added torment to a child who already feels bad, right? No kid wants to be yelled at, one, but especially no kid wants to be hit. So I was just like, you know what? I'm just not going to do that. I'm not going to hit my son. I didn't tell him, I just didn't do it. And so from that point, whenever he would mess up, if I had to raise my voice, I raised my voice, but I didn't abuse that. I was more so focused on communicating with him about why he's not supposed to do certain things. And if there is some sort of punishment that needs to be applied, then I would apply it. But I think sometimes we overemphasize the need to punish and de-emphasize the need to teach our kids, because children have underdeveloped brains and they're going to mess up because they have no life experience and their brains aren't fully developed. So they're going to make dumb mistakes to us, right? Because they can't see around the corner. So no, a 2-year-old doesn't realize if they turn the burner on the stove that they can burn their hand. They're not going to understand that. They might know that if you turn the burner on, there's fire, right? So, are you going to be more upset with the 2-year-old who burns their hand, or with yourself for not teaching them that fire hurts?
Yeah.
Right. And is your response to them, if they burn themselves, to beat them? What does that teach them? Right. So this is very mindful thinking about how we want to raise our kids and what do we actually want to teach our kids? Because raising children is essentially training them to become adults, but you're doing it in incremental fashion throughout their life. And so I know I've been speaking a little bit, but I just want to give you a quick example.
Yeah.
When my son, I can't remember how old he was. He might have been like 3, but he would play like these little games. And when he would lose, he'd get really disappointed. Like he would just get really upset and pout. And he did that a few times. And I was looking at him and I was like, I don't like that. And the reason I didn't like that is because I knew as an adult, life presents disappointments. You're not going to get the things that you always want. So what I started doing from that moment on is I started introducing moments of disappointment for him. So
without being a disappointing dad. So that's you're being a good dad. Yeah.
Exactly. So what I would do, he would come to me, and this is real. He would come over to me and say, "Can I have a cookie?" Now he was good. He didn't do anything wrong, but I would tell him no. And he would pout for a little bit and eventually walk away and go into the room. For every week, he would ask me, "Can I have a cookie?" And I would say no. And then to the point where he's like, "Okay." And he would just walk away. So, and this was in a matter of like a month. of just like telling him no, that he can't have something, I would see how he just took it. Okay, can't have it. And I saw his demeanor change as far as playing the game and doing certain things. And he wasn't as pouty and stuff like that. And there were times where I would tell him no, you're like, all right, and he'd just walk away, no huffing and puffing. And then like 15 minutes later, I'll be like, you're gonna have a cookie because of how you handle that. Yeah. Right. So, but by doing that, he's had to face times where they had to move. He's living with his mother. They had to move. They had to deal with this circumstance. Life wasn't exactly going the way that he wanted to, but he had to deal with it. He didn't crumble. He knows that he has to weather the storm and kind of handle these things. Why? Because he wasn't coddled and given everything that he wants to signify that everything will always work out the way that you want it to. But it's to say that I introduce disappointment to him because life will present harsher disappointments than telling him no, that you can't have a cookie.
Yeah. We, my wife and I, we don't spank our kids. We don't hit them. And something that I realized, this is part of the reason, what we talked about even before they were born, we're not gonna, be those kinds of parents. But I was even thinking about it, just kind of like looking at my own hands and the idea of like how hard I could slap, and like I could really fuck up a kid, like really hurt a kid. And then it got me thinking, it was almost, I used to really view like I got hit with a belt when I was a kid. I remember a few times, and which just seems so cruel. And I'm not saying that belts are good or anything like that, but if I had to choose between my own hand and a belt, I could see going with the belt because there's a level of pain that I think would be less than my hand. Then I'm not like letting people off the hook, but like the idea of like getting smacked by like a grown ass man, across the face versus getting a belt on the leg. I don't know if other parents have done these, done the calculations on this, but it was something where it was like, oh, that actually seems in a way a little bit more humane as a punishment than like an open palmed, smack. But that's neither here or there. Something too is what I liked in the story that you told is like, when you liked how your son responded to being told no, you're like, okay, you can get a cookie. So it's, reinforcing that like, hey, just be cool, man. Just be cool. And you'll be rewarded. And something, I definitely look to my kids is like giving them, like actual, when they accomplish something, like looking for like, oh, you did that great. Thank you so much for helping me out. My 4-year-old taught himself how to ride a bike, which to me is insane. He was on, for a little while, he was on one of those balance bikes with no pedals. And then one day we were like, oh, we think it's time to go, to a big boy bike. And there was a family down the road who they have like a ton of kids. So they, ton of kids, they have a ton of shit to, give away. And they had one of these bikes, and my wife went there with my son to pick it up, and I got a text, and she's like, come outside right now. And I come outside, and who's riding towards me but my son? The first time he ever got on a bike, and he's pedaling and riding it with no the training wheels or anything like that. And I was like, I was just so blown away. Like I didn't know this was possible. I mean, I remember me, the first time me trying to ride, like me falling all over the place and stuff. And, I think, sort of creating an environment where, I don't know, my kid is able to do that. I'm like, damn, all right. It's a kind of a priceless thing for a dad to behold,
Yeah. An environment where a child is able to express themselves, mess up, be creative, do all these different things. These things are important. I would never want to create an environment where my son feels that he has to be perfect, because I for sure am not perfect. So why would I expect a child who has an underdeveloped brain to do everything perfectly or to remember everything that I've told him?
Yeah.
You know, and this is why, like, I think a good exercise for parents is to remember when they were a child. Like, because you're an adult, hopefully you live long enough where you're an adult longer than you were a child. And so you get stuck in this adult world and how you see the world through an adult lens, but you forget what it was like to be a kid.
Right.
And so for me, like, the best decisions I made was when I remember when I was a kid. And so how you mentioned, like, you might have exploded on your son and you're like, gosh, I could have done that better, you know, something like that. When that's happened with me, I've gone back later on and I apologized to him.
Yeah,
And I said,
that's huge. Yeah,
yeah,
that's really important. Yeah, because a lot
yeah,
of like there's a whole generation of parents who just never never apologize
yeah.
to their kids even when they messed up. Yeah.
I'm the adult. Well, whatever I say goes, and do as I say, not as I do, and all this other bravado kind of like parenting style is, there's no humility in it whatsoever. And by acting like that, you're acting sort of like a tyrant, right?
Mhm.
When you're supposed to be a leader. And so leaders are respectable people, but no one respects a tyrant. They're scared of a tyrant. Um, so there's fine lines, and sometimes when people grow up with tyrants, they think that not being a tyrant means that you're being your child's friend and weak and feeble, and they don't know what it's like to live in a household not ruled by a tyrant. And so what I decided to do, and then just so, for record, I'm not saying that my mother was a tyrant. So,
There was a military coup,
yeah,
and your mother took over by force.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. But there are elements of, in a lot of different parenting, a lot of different parents. There's an element of, um, I'm the parent, so whatever I say goes, and I can't do anything wrong. Well, no, we all do something wrong sometimes. You know, in our relationships, you're a married man. Like, in our relationships, we mess up. You know what? I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that. Right? Rather than say, well, you know what? It doesn't matter. You know what I meant. You know,
Yeah.
instead of doing that, just be humble and just say, you know what? I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that. And hopefully you're with someone who says, it's okay. I appreciate you apologizing because that did affect me. And then
Mhm.
you just move on, right? You clear the air and you just move on. And I've done that with my son, where I know that I was frustrated at something else, and my son got in the car and said something, and I took my frustration out on him and I snapped on him. And I feel bad about that. So I want to clear the air and tell him, like, sorry, I shouldn't have done that. That wasn't for you. That was about something else. But I'm not angry at you. I should be better. I should be more responsible. And they accept that. And then we can move on. So he doesn't think like he messed up. It's his fault, you know. So they don't hold on to that type of stuff. But I do think that there's a difference between the parents who command respect and the parents who are respectable,
Yeah.
right? And my son respects me because I've treated him with respect. He can rely on me. I'm honest with him. Like, we have I'm an authority figure to him. I'm not my son's friend, but I'm a respectable authority figure. And there's that, like, that balance in between. Obviously, like, there are the parents who are, they want to be their child's friend, and they're just as bad in it for a different reason, right? But there's that balance in between. I'm the authority figure, but I'm a healthy authority figure, right? Um, and so you can rely on me to take care of you and to be honest with you, and I will listen to you as well. So if you say, Dad, I don't like when you do this, then you know what? I'm going to take that in because maybe I'm not doing right.
Yeah.
Or if I mistreat you, it's up to me as a parent to apologize to you because I shouldn't have done that, to set the example for you that hopefully if you mess up with somebody else, that they would give you the grace to hear your apology too. and not to be afraid to show that you made a mistake. You did something that you didn't mean to, or you accidentally transferred your anger onto somebody else. So I think how we treat our children teaches them a lot, even if you don't realize it.
Yeah. Well, so with your own story, did you ever reconnect with your biological father? Or?
So my situation wasn't one of those where one day he up and left and never saw him again.
Mm-hmm.
He was just incredibly inconsistent. There was no relationship that was really formed. So up until I think it was around the age of 6, I lived in Detroit. That's where I was born. And then we left Detroit, and I would see him every so often because we were in the same city, but he was always married. He was married to somebody else. So, we were kind of like the other kids.
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't live with us. He couldn't. He was married to another woman. So his participation was always kind of like probably shaky. I only remember so much from when I was 6 and younger, but it doesn't appear to be very solid. Based off of like what my mom tells me and stuff like that, it doesn't sound like we had a solid relationship even at that young age. She told me that at certain points when in my childhood that he would bribe me with money to get me to come to him, which clearly tells me like there is no bond between us.
Yeah.
But when we left Detroit, then I rarely saw him. I would see him. I know when we left Detroit, I probably didn't see him for a few years after that. And the times that I would see him, it was when he would drive from Detroit over to New York City because he was a tailor. So he might go there to get fabric and stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
That's
an interesting, that's an interesting job. My dad's a butcher. So I feel like butchers and tailors are kind of like old world, sort of professions in a way.
Yeah. I think he had a dry cleaning service, but he did tailoring work out of it. But he was an older man. When I was born, he was 50. So
oh, wow.
It was a big age difference. He was 50, my mom was 24. So that's a whole other story.
Yeah. That sounds like another story for sure.
Yeah. But when we would go to he would go to New York City and get fabric. So he would stay with us. But I always felt like my dad was there because it was like a pit stop. It was a place for him to sleep. But he wasn't there to see us. He's like, hey, I'm coming to see you. It wasn't anything like that. It was just like my mom would say, your dad's coming to town. I was like, okay. And then he would come, get the hellos. But he was very clearly there to do other stuff. He wasn't there. Now that I'm here, we get to go here. I'm going to take my kids. It wasn't like that. He was primarily there to go to New York, and we were close to New York. So, the last time I saw my father, I was 16. And the last time I talked to him on the phone was when I was 21. It was just after my son was born. And I called him, and it sounded like I was bothering him, to be honest with you. So it was a very short phone call.
Was he like in his 70s at that time? Like 70s?
Yeah,
right if you were 21?
Yeah, he was early 70s, yeah. But he still had the dry cleaning service, where he worked at, where he owned. So I called him there, and it just sounded like I was bothering him, like he wasn't interested in talking to me. So I was on the phone with him for maybe like 2 minutes.
Jesus.
And so I just told myself, I'm not going to try anymore. But if he decides one day to reach out to me, then I'll pick up the phone and talk to him. He never did. And he passed away, I believe it was 2018. He passed away. And we found out he died because my mom just happened to Google his name and found the funeral home.
Did he have pictures? Did he have other kids with that other family?
So interestingly enough, writing this book, I presented an opportunity to talk to my mom and my sister about these particular things. I always thought he had kids with his wife. He never had kids with his wife.
Wow.
And I apparently have a sister somewhere. So for another woman somewhere, I don't know where, he had another daughter.
Man, who got the business? The tailoring.
Oh, I have no idea. Clearly, we weren't in the will.
I was getting.
We didn't know he died.
I mean, the guy could have died. It's like, dude, I mean, for those of you out there who are looking to abandon a family, I guess, leave a little something. I mean, geez, man, even if it's like a cool suit or something like that. Geez.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's difficult to hear to hear these stories, and you know, and as you talked about, you know, earlier on, I wanted to know, like, you know, are there concrete things that you know you missed by not having, you know, your dad in the house? Because I like my dad worked a lot, but he didn't like go to work and then go to the bar and come home. It was, he went to work, came home every night. He was always there, even if he was, working 6 days a week.
Right.
And when I think about like my own kids, like I was on the road on tour, I was really missing kind of the sleep routine that we have, where, you know, they each have their bed, and when it's time to sleep, mommy's in bed with Matteo, I'm in bed with Andreas. You know, Matteo often goes to bed sooner, so then mommy will come and either take over my spot, or she'll leave, and once he's asleep, I get to leave, and then me and mommy sleep in our bed, and then at some point, you know, sometimes around like 3:30 in the morning, you can hear the little pitter patter of this like little midgets come in, and then they're gonna hop in the bed with us, and it's like that is a priceless routine that obviously if I wasn't in the picture, I wouldn't know what that's like. You know, I wouldn't know what that feels like. So I know I know for sure what I'm missing. But also me not being there is also something that they'd be missing. Like I sometimes describe it as, I don't like when my kids have, nightmares, but I like to be there for them if they have a nightmare, So yeah, I'm just, I guess kind of open-ended question.
No, I would say that having a man to relate to what you're going through, especially entering like your teenage years, where you're going from being like a boy to kind of like a young man. You're like trying to come into your own, experiencing certain things, and let's say you mess up, having someone to be like, it's okay that you messed up. Like, I messed up too. And to talk about it, or to have a strategy, or to figure out like, well, what do I want to do with my life? And having someone to talk to about it and give you real advice. Just have someone help to build up your confidence, right? The way I see it is, the fathers, they have a unique job as far as being the confidence builders, especially for boys, where they're there to say, it's all right that you messed up, right? The mother nurtures, right? The kid falls down, they bump their knee, falling off a bike, let's just say, although your kid apparently can ride a bike really well. But like, they fall off a bike, they bump their knee, the kid's in pain, the mother comes over and nurtures, oh, I'm so sorry, are you okay? And then the father says, he'll be fine. Get up and do it again. You got this, right? It's a balance and approach, because every child needs that nurture. Like they need to know that there's a place to feel that nurture, but also someone to snap them back into reality and have them say, like, you got this. Like, I know it hurt, but life hurts sometimes, but you can do this. Like, to kind of build up their confidence. These were things that I didn't get as a kid. Specifically from my father. So if I messed up, I thought something was wrong with me. And so that just continued into like lower self-esteem. If I was struggling in school, my mom worked a lot, so I didn't feel comfortable going to my mom. I think I would have felt different going to my father, like having that male relationship to try to figure out like, well, how do I do this? Or like if I'm screwing up, to have that man step up and say, I expect better out of you. Right? To whip me into shape and say, get out there and do what I expect you to do. And here's exactly why. And all of these things I realized that I was missing, especially watching my son grow up. And so those areas that I was missing and I was providing for my son. So I'll give you a quick example. When my son was like in his, he was dealing with, and I'm being graceful when it comes to this. He was dealing with COVID and there were a lot of things that were going on, right? But he was not working hard in school like he should have. And like I know that he's capable of. He was a kid that, would get A's and B's and stuff like that. And he wasn't doing his work and he was slacking off. And I specifically multiple times looked him in the face like, I expect more out of you. And you cannot turn off and turn on hard work. You have to do it constantly. And I was looking dead in the face and tell him exactly why. And tell him, when you go out there in the world, your boss doesn't care about you. You have to go there and work hard and prove yourself to people. Like, these are things that are incredibly important for you, especially as a young man, because besides me and your mother, no one else will care about you. So you need to go out there and you need to work and work as hard as you possibly can, because that's what I expect you to do. And late last year, he works at this restaurant. He was Employee of the Month.
That's great.
And when I was there for his birthday, because we went to, he was working, and I went over to the restaurant, and all of his coworkers are there to blow out the candles with him and sing happy birthday with him while he was at work. But he was still working. And I'm watching this boy buzz. Like, he's just all over the restaurant. He was busting tables, wiping that stuff down. Like he was just buzzing around there. And every single person that worked there liked him. They respected him because they know he come in, he's going to do his job. Matter of fact, so much so that the times that he would talk to me and complain to me about his job was that everybody else was lazy. Or not everybody else. He'd be like,
I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. Like one person, he's like, I like them, but they don't ever do their job. Right. It's like, welcome to the world. Like, sometimes you go to these jobs and nobody else wants to work. So, but just to see him value that hard work and see it pay off and see him get promoted. So instead of busting tables now, he's serving, right? But he initially wanted to come there and be at something else, but he was like, I'll take it. Mm-hmm. He didn't have this ego, like, I'm only taking what I deserve. He said, all right, I'll go in there. I'll take it. I need a job. I'll work really hard. And he's like, even for someone in my situation, it usually takes them longer to become a server. They did it real fast for him. Why? Because he proved himself. He came in there, he worked really hard. So even at the age of 19, he's seeing the fruits of his labor. He's seeing what happens when you work hard. And I'm also hoping that he sees how his father operates, and he's using that as an example as well. Just in the same way that I see how my mother operates. My mom's always hustling, even to this day. My mom's hustling, and she's always doing something. And that's why I never gave up and said, "Oh, I'll just take, government assistance or whatever." I like looking for a handout. Like, I was always working. I've been working since I was 15. So I was always working, always trying to earn my own money, always doing something. If something didn't work out, I did the next thing. So I think that hard work was something that I got from my mother, and I think my son got from me.
Yeah. Oh man, it's such a moment of pride. I mean, as a parent, to see your kid doing so well. Like my wife and I, our kids are in pre Andreas, there was one of the students was feeling very sad, and Andreas went over and checked in on her and played with her and made her, happy. And the other guy is always the I forget what they call it, but he's like the caboose or something like that on their line, and he holds the door open and stuff. And it's like, and the way that I'm looking at it is like, look, if the trade-off is my boys are maniacs at home, but when they go out into the world, they are, just model human beings. I'm like, I'll take that. And something happens too, you being there as a dad, as someone for your son to look at and look up to. My kids are also reminders of like what I have to do, because one of the things that my kids have said to me is like, daddy's strong, and for a lot of people will take that, well, it's like, obviously I'm an adult male, I'm going to be stronger than you. But when they say that to me, it's like a reminder of like, oh, I need to work out. Like I need to be strong for my kids, I need to be healthy, I need to be lifting more and all that. So it's, and it's like, I want to stick around for, another, 40 or some odd years, to be able to, see what kind of, dudes these guys grow up to be. You had talked about in your own experience, being institutionalized. Was that, how old are you? What happened with that?
It was a spout of leaving Detroit, ending up in Virginia. Some stuff happened there. Then we ended up moving to New York. So all of that happened in, I would say, like less than 2 years. And, staying with family members, and then feeling unwanted. And when we made it to New York, we were staying with a family member. I wasn't being treated well. And my mother was like, I'm getting us out of here. But we didn't have any place to go, so we went to hotel rooms. She tried to get some help. She came across this woman who had a trailer. She had a room available, so all three of us stayed in that room in the trailer. And we stayed there, I want to say it was a little bit over a month before my mom got an apartment. There was a lot of things that were happening. And then by the time we made it into the apartment, the way it was described to me, because I remember certain parts, I don't remember other parts.
How old are you? When
8.
was that? 8. Wow.
Yeah. The way it was described to me was that I had a mental break.
Okay.
Just like I was screaming underneath the kitchen table, holding myself. Told my mother that I wanted to die. I specifically told her if she loved me, she'd help me die. And I don't think I was actually suicidal. I think I was just in distress, and I didn't know how to express that. But it was basically recommended to her to have me committed. So I was admitted into a mental hospital at the age of 8. I was essentially there for 3 months. And when you're in a mental hospital, it's different than like being in jail. With jail, you know when you're going to get out. But in a mental hospital, you don't know when you're leaving. It's up to their discretion, And so every day you're just hoping today's the day you get to go home. And especially as like an 8-year-old child, like you just don't know. So the only thing I knew was to like listen to what they said. If they told me to do something, just do it. Because being compliant was more likely for me to go home. And so I hid how I felt. I just did what they told me to do so I can get the hell out of there. But after that, even my mother said I was different. I was more reclusive, very deadpan as far as my emotions. Even still to this day, I'm kind of that way. Although I think I've gotten a little bit better. But like, it's hard to sometimes tell if I'm upset, if I'm happy, if I'm sad. It's just very...
Yeah, I hope you've been enjoying this conversation. I can't. No. Well, as an 8-year-old, I mean, were there other kids in there, or were you like
Yeah.
among the? Oh, okay.
Yeah. This was the way to kind of describe it. It was a very big room that it was all kids were around the same age as me. Um, and we would have one massive area where you could play, or we would have our group therapy sessions. And then there was a back area with our beds kind of lined up uh, next to each other, or that's where we would sleep. But we were basically in that room the entire day.
Wow.
So unless you were, because the door was locked, it's a locked facility. So unless you were with a professional like a doctor or an attendant, they would assist you out of the room to go somewhere else. But everything, like the bathrooms, everything was in there. So you never really left that room unless you had a particular reason. Like if for visiting hours, for visiting, my mother would come and we would leave and we would go outside into there's I remember it was like picnic tables and stuff like that. And that's where we would sit together during visiting hours. But
Did you have to wear anytime I think of like an institution, I always think of either like Awakenings or One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, like a white, all white, pants and shirt. Did you wear? Was there like a uniform that you had to wear?
This is a good question. And I can't really. Nothing sticks out in my head about wearing some sort of uniform.
Mm-hmm.
I almost feel like I wore normal clothes.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't remember it being a uniform. I get the feeling they were trying to make that room as normal for a child as possible. Because, like I said, it was basically kids from the age of probably 10 to 8. We were all around the same age. So I don't remember wearing some sort of uniform. We could have, but I don't really remember. That's a good question though.
Yeah. What were you, did they put you on something like a medication, or is that?
That's another good question. I don't remember being medicated.
Mm-hmm.
I remember therapy.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't think I needed to be medicated, but you never know with institutions. They may just throw people on drugs.
Well, that's the thing. I don't know if this is something that, it's kind of like in the culture through like media and stuff, and like the, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, where anytime I think of like institutions, I always think of the most nefarious thing, and like even like the prospect of all these kids like in a room, like in my mind it sounds like torturous, in a way, but I mean obviously it worked for you, right? I mean you did 3 months there and helped you out.
I mean, but that's why I say I don't think I was at that age. I don't think I was actually suicidal because I don't think I fully understood what it meant.
Yeah.
Like when you're a kid and your entire world is basically right in front of you, but your entire world is unpredictable, or things are painful, or you don't know how to express yourself, like your life sucks and you have no control over it. Right. So you're just kind of I don't know what to do, and you have this foreign concept of death, and all you know is well, if this is my life, then I want to die because there's no other option for me, right? So, obviously as an 8-year-old, you don't have the emotional intelligence to say well, here's why, and I'm feeling this particular way. It's just there's so much that's going on around you. You want certain things, or you want certain things to stop. You don't know how to express yourself. So I don't think that place helped me, other than to tell me that it just gave me an example that if I express my feelings, that it could get me locked up.
Oh shit. Oh.
And if I expressed it, which I did, in a way that this is the only way that I know how to express feeling tormented, is that death. It doesn't mean that I'm going to grab grab a knife and kill myself. Matter of fact, if I remember correctly, I said the way I thought I wanted to die was getting underneath my bed and hoping that the bed falls on me. Right? It's a very like kid-like way. It doesn't sound like a real structured way. Like if I was truly intending to kill myself.
Right.
On top of that, any sort of professional would see like, well, very clearly, he's experiencing all different types of distress, including abandonment. And so taking him away from the only environment that he's familiar with and further abandoning him in a facility away from the things that that was the only thing he had left is only re-traumatizing him. And so I've had multiple people tell me like, if that was today, we would never do that. Like we wouldn't do that in your circumstance. That's excessive. We would say he needs more talk therapy. Like he needs to talk this out. He needs to have actual like the child therapist to talk these things through. And personally, I think that was it. I don't remember feeling like I was about to kill myself, like I was planning it or like anything like that. Like I was about to do it. I think I was just in distress and I didn't know how to express what I was going through. But I think as years went on, those thoughts became more structured and it was like in and out of depression and suicidal ideation. And it was just a thing that kind of stuck with me for decades, you know, struggling with these things. As I got older, especially after having my son gave me more of a purpose and tethered me to life. So even just like if the thought of ending my life would come into my mind, I knew I couldn't do it because of my son. So, you know, it was definitely something that I struggled with, you know, because the abandonment issues didn't fully go away. Resolving these things didn't fully go away. It wasn't only until like my mid-20s that going to therapy and resolving these things that I didn't realize were unresolved, that have really started to help me. I had like 2 bouts of going to therapy for different reasons. And that really helped me to resolve these things, but also it gave me the strategies to like overcome these particular obstacles without actually going to a therapist.
Well, I bet, you know, writing the book has definitely helped you too, right? Just try to make sense of all this stuff and put it together.
You would think so, but actually, I had resolved most of these things, if not everything. I had resolved these things, so it was actually harder for me to write it because I had resolved it. So I had to kind of like drum up old feelings. Most of the feelings weren't like on the edge for me to like grab on. Like if I'm crying, I write better. So like I had to drudge up like these old feelings to try and like force myself to be emotional so I could write really well about what I was experiencing. But on my day-to-day, like I held no animosity towards my father. I've forgiven my father. You know, I've forgiven my mother in certain areas. I've also apologized to my mother. The book has helped me to get closer to my mother. And also writing the book helped me relate more to my mother as well. So I am grateful for that. It opened up the door to have more conversations about my childhood and resolve certain things. Like there were certain things I just never talked to my mom about. And so for the first time, I was doing that, and including with my sister, just having these conversations so I can kind of like wrap up or at least like find out details that I never asked about. And I was like, oh, I didn't know about that. Like, and kind of giving me this information. But the book has actually made me feel at least closer to my mother. And I know, and I've apologized to her, like I've been the best of a son. I know there were times in my adult years I was distant, and I was dealing with my own stuff, and I was confused, and I was, struggling in different areas. And so, like today, I'm happy. Like I'm in a happy marriage. My son's grown. He's healthy. I'm in a completely different place today than I was 10 years ago. And now, especially now that I'm 40, I'm able to look back and say, like, I get my mother. Like, she has her flaws and she did certain things, but I understand her. And I think sometimes when we look back, we look at our parents and we see the flaws, but those flaws overshadow like the litany of good things that they did for us. The things that were motivated by love that they didn't have to do. They weren't obligated to do those things. And when I thought about that, I'm like, oh, the amount of effort and her thinking about me and how that affected, like my sister was with my mother when she would come to visit me for when I was in the mental hospital. But I never thought about my mother's perspective of when I was locked away.
Oh God, how painful. Yeah, that must have been.
Right. And my sister was telling me, she was like, I was with her every time. And every time we would drive home, she was crying the entire time. And I never thought about my mother's perspective until my sister told me that. So like, and I get it because I'm a father.
Yeah.
So I think as you get older, you become less harsh when it comes to judging your parents because you see the effort. Yeah, they made mistakes. Yeah, they're not perfect. I'm not perfect. But you see the effort and you're like, you know what? I wish they didn't do that, or I wish they could have done this better. But man, all the different areas where they did step up, they could have just said, you know what, F it, I give up on you, or not have given you that extra thing or tried as hard in this area. Like these are things that I appreciate far more today than I did, even just 10 years ago.
Yeah. Well, with Mother's Day coming up, I think I have a gift that everyone could give their mom. It's Adam Coleman's book, The Children We Left Behind. Adam, thank you so much. And again, both Adam and I are affiliates with XXXY. So if you're looking to add to your wardrobe, definitely head over there. And I'm wearing one of the shirts right now. They are incredibly comfortable. Some of them I think are too comfortable, where I feel bad working out in it because I stink when I work out. And so I'm going to get this one all stinky today. So Adam, thank you so much, man.